You're on 2SER 107.3 FM. This is Friday Drive. Before that track, we were listening to one from Fair Trade Narcotics with Cannon and Blur the Explorer at the very top with Clear Blue Mind. As I said, you're listening to 2SER 107.3 FM. And look, if you have been a long-time listener, you will know that we love everything history here on Friday Drive. We've got segments focusing on it. Our producers' picks often features lots of classics and callbacks, but we don't always get a chance to talk about our local history specifically. That's why we're excited to talk about this year's iteration of the Australian Heritage Festival, run by the National Trust. It is among the nation's largest community-driven events, opening on World Heritage Day this Saturday, 18th of April, and running for a month until 18th of May. It features events and activities right across the state and Sydney, focusing on the history and heritage of all Australian communities. And one of these events is the launch of Found a Fossil. It's a book by paleontologist and science communicator Sally Hurst about community involvement in the discovery of dinosaur bones and other archaeological sites, which is really, really cool, interesting stuff. And Sally is right on the line with us right now to chat about it. Sally, have I got you?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Welcome to 2SER. Thanks so much for joining us on the show. So, Sally, you're launching this book next month, which is based on your work as a paleontologist. Congratulations, first and foremost. That is a huge feat. Could you explain to our listeners what does your work entail and which parts did you focus on when developing this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I always start with when I talk to different audiences is the difference between paleontology and archaeology. So paleontology, that's what you're going to picture when you are imagining Jurassic Park. It is dinosaurs, it is fossils, it is creatures and plants that are super old, usually from a past geological age. Now, archaeology tends to be a bit younger. It is related to human history and the objects that people have left behind. It can be anywhere from about 50 years old to, some of the earliest humans on the planet, so maybe 3 to 6 million years old, but there's a bit of grey area there. It's probably what you imagine when you're thinking of Indiana Jones. Unfortunately for me, or fortunately, I'm both. And so it definitely gets confusing for those two things. But this book launches into why are both fossils and artefacts so amazing? What can they tell us about the past? And how do we as scientists start to piece together all of these different clues to create a better story of what has happened thousands or even millions of years ago?
Wow, that's so interesting and amazing. I mean, I can't imagine how much information is just stored in that brilliant mind of yours. I'm very, very jealous of your brain power. Who were you writing this book for, or how were you hoping? Who were you hoping to inspire?
Honestly, this book is for everyone. It's not specifically for scientists. You don't need to have any background in paleontology or science or history. It is for anyone who's interested. So a lot of my work is focused on the fact that for things like dinosaurs, about 70% of the bones that we found in Australia were not found by scientists. They were found by members of the public, from farmers to miners, bushwalkers, surfers on the beach, and they noticed something interesting on the rocks. And so this book is for them. It's for people who have maybe an interest, or maybe they found something, they're not quite sure what to do. Or it's just for people who love dinosaurs and are interested in learning about some cool fossils from around the world and how we can dig them up.
Amazing. You've mentioned that it's common for everyday Australians, to stumble across paleontological discoveries instead of scientists themselves. What should a listener do if they find a fossil?
So if they are someone who is in New South Wales, you're in Sydney or somewhere close by and you found something, just have a quick think about where you actually are. If you're in somewhere like a national park, take a bunch of photos, send it to somewhere like a museum or university, but you'll have to leave the find behind. If it's on your own property, so your own farm, you can then pick it up. It is technically, you own it. Again, we'd still always go back to talking to a museum or a university, someone who can confirm what you have, because, look, it might be a brachiopod or a shell or something we have a million of, and that is yours to keep, but it could also be something like a brand new dinosaur. And so in that case, we definitely want to hear about it so we can hopefully study it further and we can share it with more people. And maybe we can even name it after you as well.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine having a fossil named after me. Would it also just be, I'm like recalling in the very, very distant categories of my brain from ancient history in year 11 and 12 that would potentially leaving a fossil in situ maybe kind of be, and I wanted to just kind of use the term in situ there, be kind of for the best if you do happen to stumble across something?
Yeah, look, again, it depends what it is. So for some things, down on the Victorian coast, for example, we find dinosaur footprints and they're embedded in the rock. So, while people have unfortunately vandalised the site, they've tried to get a rock saw or a pickaxe to, take it home with them. Unfortunately, it's just destroyed the site. So even though those sites are often submerged by water, they've lasted for 100 million years. They can probably last there by themselves for a few million years without us interfering.
Yeah, wow. You've also had a varied academic career, but you started with studying paleobiology and ancient Egyptian archaeology at Macquarie University. For listeners interested in your field, how do these different aspects of history and archaeology influence your current work?
So that degree at Macquarie was honestly the basis for everything that I'm doing now. So I finished that degree and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life next. Usually you have to, if you keep studying, you have to specialise more, or if you go into industry, you have to pick a job in one of those fields. It's very rare that they do kind of cross over in that way. And I did not want to have to choose. I think studying both of these things for 3 or 4 years just made me fall in love with them more. And so I thought, no, after all that, I don't want to choose. I'm going to create something new that is going to combine them. So I was very lucky that I was able to do a Master's of Research. So it was a 2-year course and we had to design our own original research project. And this is how the original Found a Fossil project kind of began. So it was an Australia-wide survey asking people, what would you do if you discovered a fossil or a First Nations artefact? So really having that both archaeology and paleontology kind of content in there, because as I mentioned at the start, while they are very different in their significance, in their formation, and what the objects actually are, they're found all across the Australian landscape and anyone really could find them.
Amazing. Lastly, I just have one final question for you, Sally. We've got, and it's, I would say, our most important question so far. What is your favourite dinosaur or dinosaurs and why?
Look, it's a long list and it's hard to choose. However, I have a clear winner. It is called the Pachycephalosaurus.
Ooh.
It had a really thick skull. We're talking inches thick of bone.
Wow.
And we think they walked on 2 legs and they potentially headbutted each other with these big skulls. It's been very fun because I've actually got one tattooed on me. So now whenever kids or when I'm doing these talks, like at my book launch, and people ask, like, oh, what is your favourite dinosaur? I'm like, oh, here is a picture on my body I prepared earlier.
Amazing. You've got the answer locked and loaded and ready to demonstrate. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sally, for joining us on 2SER today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, Sally. Anyone interested in learning more about Find a Fossil and paleontology in Australia can join Sally on Thursday, the 7th of May at 6 p.m. over at Gale History Museum at Macquarie University. So make sure you go check it out.